My name is Clara Jensen, 27 years old. Last night at the dinner table that once smelled of Sunday roast and laughter, my sister looked me in the eye and said, "You are a burden. We want to live without you." The words fell heavier than the silverware clattering on my plate. My mother didn't say a word. My father kept eating as if he hadn't heard it. But he did. They all did. For years, I believed family meant forgiveness, love, and second chances. I was the quiet one, the peacemaker, the one who stayed home when everyone else chased dreams. But apparently, that made me disposable. That night, I walked out of the house barefoot. The air was cold, the stars indifferent. I realized something brutal. Love isn't always unconditional. Sometimes, family is the knife you never see coming. I kept walking, letting the frost bite through my skin, and for the first time, I didn't turn back. Every step away from that house felt like peeling off a layer of my old self, the one who begged to be seen, to be loved, to belong. By dawn, the pain hardened into clarity. They didn't want me? Fine. I would vanish from their world so completely they'd only remember me in regret. I would build something so strong, so radiant, that they'd choke on their own words. Because when you tell someone they're a burden, you never imagine they might become the storm that sweeps through everything you thought you controlled. So tell me, what would you do if your family turned on you overnight? Would you beg for love or burn everything they built? The Jensens looked perfect from the outside. Our white-painted house in Maplewood had a trimmed lawn, a porch swing that never creaked, and a flag fluttering neatly in the breeze. To the world, we were the kind of family that waved at neighbors, sent Christmas cards on time, and never raised our voices. Inside, though, we were a house of cold wars, a place where love had rules and silence did the punishing. My mother, Elaine Kakuo, lived for the illusion. She was the kind of woman who ironed napkins for dinner and took selfies in front of grocery store flower displays just to caption them, "grateful." Her happiness depended on being envied. She didn't raise daughters. She managed reputations. Every gesture, every smile, every word had to fit her vision of the perfect family. My father, George Ho, was the quiet tyrant, a man who believed feelings were flaws, who measured affection by obedience. He didn't yell, he just stared long enough to make you wish he had. "Be practical," he always said, which was his way of saying, "Don't feel too much." And then there was Maya, my older sister, the golden child, beautiful, magnetic, and effortlessly adored. If Mom was the director, Maya was the star of the production. She could do no wrong. Her grades, her job, her fiancé, all golden. Even her mistakes were learning experiences. Meanwhile, mine were disappointments. Me? I was the background character in their story. The extra who made others look good by comparison. The daughter who stayed home to help when Mom's migraines struck, who kept Dad's files organized when he was too tired, and who cheered Maya on when she landed yet another promotion or engagement photo shoot. I was useful, but never celebrated. Present, but invisible. It hadn't always been like that. When we were kids, Maya and I were inseparable. We built forts in the living room, shared secrets under blankets, and swore we'd run away together someday, two sisters against the world. But as we grew older, the world didn't want two Jensens shining. It wanted one, and Mom made sure it was her. When I got a scholarship to study interior design in Chicago, I thought maybe, finally, it was my turn. I remember packing a suitcase, excitement fizzing through my veins. Then Mom sat me down at the kitchen table. "Clara, sweetheart," she said softly, "Grandma isn't doing well. You can't leave now. She needs you. We need you." It sounded noble, like sacrifice, but it wasn't. It was control. 1 year turned into 2, then 5. Grandma passed, and still, I stayed. Partly out of guilt, mostly out of fear. By then, the dream had faded into something fragile, like a photograph left too long in sunlight. Dinner was the family's ritual. Every evening at 6, we gathered like clockwork. Dad unfolded his newspaper, Maya tapped her phone under the table, and Mom made conversation nobody cared about. I spoke only when spoken to. My opinions were too sensitive, my ideas too unrealistic. I learned to keep quiet, to smile when I wanted to scream. But silence is never harmless. It collects, like dust in corners, until one day it suffocates you. The cracks showed in subtle ways. Mom's sighs when I mentioned moving out. Maya's smug little comments. "You're lucky Mom lets you stay rent-free," or "You should thank her for not kicking you out." Each word chipped away at my patience, but I still played along. I helped Maya with her wedding plans, smiled through her arrogance, and convinced myself it was temporary. That one day, they'd see me for who I was. But deep down, I already knew the truth. They didn't want to see me. They needed me small. They needed me quiet. Because every family built on lies needs someone to carry the weight of pretending, until the day that person finally breaks. And that night, I did. It started small, like a crack in glass. Barely noticeable at first, but once it appeared, it spread through everything. Maya's wedding was a month away, and the house buzzed with preparations. Mom was in her element, bossing florists, berating caterers, and pretending her family was one seamless portrait of happiness. I was the unpaid assistant. I handled the invitations, the seating chart, the last-minute vendor calls, the errands. No one wanted to run. Every time I checked something off the list, I hoped for a simple "thank you." It never came. Then one evening, as I walked past the kitchen, I heard Mom's voice through the half-closed door. "Clara's finally useful for something," she said, with that satisfied little hum she did when life went her way. The woman on the phone, probably Aunt Ruth, laughed. Mom laughed back. I stood there, my hand gripping the doorframe until my knuckles went white. Useful. Not loved. Not appreciated. Just useful. That word rang in my head for days. Still, I told myself not to overreact. Families say hurtful things sometimes, right? You forgive. You move on. But something was shifting under the surface. A quiet rebellion forming where my patients used to live. 2 days before the family dinner, Maya handed me an envelope and said, "Pick up my dress from the tailor. They'll close at 6. She didn't even look at me. "No. Please. No thank you. Just an order." I drove across town, picked up the silk monstrosity she called her dream gown, and brought it home with care. She barely glanced at it when I arrived. "Don't wrinkle it," she said, scrolling on her phone. "You're lucky you're even invited." I forced a laugh. It was either that or throw the dress in her face. But that night, while everyone else slept, I sat on my bed and stared at the ceiling. My thoughts ran like wildfire. Years of swallowing insults, of cleaning up their messes, of pretending I was fine. The patience I'd carried for 27 years, gone. The next morning, the final blow came. I went to check my bank account. The little stash I'd been saving for a new life, a small apartment, maybe art school. It was nearly empty. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but when I asked Dad, he didn't even blink. "House expenses," he said flatly. "We've supported you long enough, Clara. It's only fair you contribute." Supported me? I wanted to laugh. I was the one who kept this house running. I was the one who stayed when everyone else left. I was the one who sacrificed everything for people who couldn't even say my name without a sigh. He didn't see that. He never would. By the time the family dinner came, I was done pretending. There was no anger left, just emptiness, like the calm before a storm. I moved through the motions, setting the table, refilling glasses, answering questions no one listened to. The same script, different night. Until Maya looked at me, smirking across the table, and said, "You know, Clara, you're kind of a burden. We want to live without you." For a second, the whole world went silent. Even the air refused to move. Mom didn't protest. She just folded her napkin neatly. Dad stared into his food as if he hadn't heard anything. But he had. They all had. The words were rehearsed, clean, deliberate, cruel. The kind you say when you've been waiting for the perfect moment to cut someone loose. I sat there, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. And then something unexpected happened. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't beg them to take it back. I just stared at Maya and smiled. A small, bitter smile that probably terrified her more than any outburst ever could. I understood everything in that moment. I wasn't part of this family. I was their scapegoat, their emotional punching bag, their proof that they were better than someone. That night, I walked out again. Not in anger, not in sadness, but in clarity. They thought they'd erased me. They were wrong. If they wanted a life without me, they were about to see what that really looked like. The next morning, I packed a single bag and walked out without a word. The house felt like someone else's dream that had been rented to me temporarily. My photos, my mug in the cupboard, even the scent of coffee felt borrowed. At the bus stop, the chill in the air matched the chill in my chest. My phone buzzed. Maya. "Don't make this dramatic, it's better this way." Better for who? I wondered, as the bus whooshed by and took the safe, familiar streetlights with it. I took the first exit out of town and checked into a cheap motel by the highway. The carpet had stains that told stories I didn't want to know. The soap smelled like hospital bleach, and the curtains let in a pale, dishonest light. For the first time in years, there was space in my head where people's expectations used to live. I breathed. The motel didn't judge me for staying in my pajamas until noon, for eating microwaved noodles, for replaying the last dinner in my head until the edges of it went numb. In that small, shabby room, I began to remember parts of myself I'd smoothed down for everyone else, the sketchbooks shoved under my bed, the stubborn ideas that had made me study design, the stubborn little thrill I got when a line finally looked right. Their silence was its own language. No calls, no frantic texts, no pleas. Just a silence so precise it felt deliberate, surgical. Absence became punishment. I watched my phone like a person watches a wound, waiting for it to tell me it was real. It didn't. Then Liam messaged. I hadn't talked to him since graduation. He'd gone into freelance design, hustling half his life into pitch decks and one-night projects. He'd seen some old sketches of mine online, things I'd uploaded on a whim, and he wanted to collaborate on a tiny project for a boutique cafe. "You still sketch?" he typed. The message was ordinary, but it pulsed like a current through me. For the first time since leaving the house, I felt useful in a way that didn't sting. I felt capable. Work was a salve. I started drafting concepts, staying up late and letting the music drown the memory of my sister's face. When ideas flowed, so did confidence. Small victories came in the form of a client saying yes and a bank notification for a modest freelance payment. It was ridiculous how much those little signals, an email, a contract, felt like proof that I existed on my own terms. Then my mother showed up at the motel. Of course she did. She arrived in a car that squealed respectability and perfume. She stood on the motel lawn like an accusation wrapped in pearls. She smiled the way people smile when they're practicing emotions. "Clara," she said, voice careful, "you can't just run off. What will people think? What will people think?" Her worry read like an admission I was more of an accessory to her social life than a human being. She paced, asked about the neighbors, about what people would say at the bridge club. She scanned the motel like she could find where I'd misplaced the right behavior for a Jensen daughter. I told her the truth. No theatrics, no pleading. "I'm fine," I said. She tightened her jaw. "You'll come home," she said, as if possession were the same as love. It wasn't the words that stung so much as the priorities that spilled out with them. Her concern was reputation, not my well-being. Not the hollow look I'd worn at the dinner table. Not the bank withdrawal Dad had framed as contribution. The only thing she rushed to guard was the house's image. That conversation changed something. Standing under the flickering neon motel sign, listening to a woman who had birthed me explain that the world's opinion mattered more than my broken heart. The fuse lit. It wasn't a sudden, cinematic explosion. It was a steady decision-gathering force. If they wanted a life without me, I would carve a life so bright they couldn't ignore it. I'd stop being the convenient shadow for their light. Betrayal had a taste. At first it was metallic, like pennies on the tongue. Then it turned sweet in a strange way, like revenge's cousin, achievement. My anger didn't scream, it planned. I refused to be their cautionary tale, their family's ugly secret. I would become their inconvenient, undeniable success. Over the next weeks, I built quietly. I took the cafe project, then another, then a referral. I worked with Liam and found my voice again in color palettes and layouts. I opened a business account, paid the motel bill with my name on the receipt, and watched my savings creep back to life. Each contract signed was another nail in the coffin of their version of me. Still, the wound remained. Betrayal is not only the words people say, it is the slow extinguishing of support, the choice to treat someone as expendable. When the letters between the motel curtain and my laptop screen spelled out opportunity, the betrayal stopped being only a curse. It became a roadmap. They had wanted me gone. I left. But leaving was the beginning, not the end. The real conflict, what I would do with the freedom I'd clawed back, was only starting. Revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it's evolution. The first taste of freedom was quiet. Too quiet. My studio apartment downtown was small enough that I could touch both walls if I stretched my arms, but it was mine. No one sighed at me for leaving dishes in the sink. No one commented on how late I stayed up. The rent was steep, but silence was a luxury I could finally afford. I poured myself into work with a hunger I didn't know I had. Liam and I landed a design contract for a small tech startup looking to reinvent their office space. I spent nights sketching floor plans on the floor, surrounded by paper, cold coffee, and the hum of the city outside my window. The exhaustion was intoxicating. Every sleepless night was a declaration that I didn't need them anymore. Each client meeting, every "we love your concept," felt like a step further from the version of me they had buried under guilt and obedience. The first paycheck from my own work hit my account, and I stared at the numbers until tears blurred them. It wasn't a fortune, it was validation. Proof that I was more than their burden. Weeks turned into months. Our little project turned heads. The client's CEO posted photos of the finished office online, tagging me. My inbox exploded overnight. A design magazine requested an interview. Then, out of nowhere, we were nominated for a National Interior Design Award. Liam laughed when we heard the news, but I didn't laugh. I felt. A spark that had been dormant for years roared back to life. When the award was announced and our names were read aloud, I didn't think of the judges or the applause. I thought of the dinner table, of my father eating in silence, of my mother's careful disapproval, of Maya's smirk. And for the first time, those memories didn't sting. They fueled me. The next morning, while sipping burnt coffee in my cluttered kitchen, I did something that sealed my revenge, clean, legal, and poetic. I registered my own design firm. The name came to me instantly: Jensen Studio. I smiled as I filled out the paperwork. They could keep the house, the dinner table, the pretense. I would take the name, the one they thought I'd tarnish, and rebuild its meaning from ashes. When the announcement went public, the messages started rolling in. Old classmates, former teachers, even neighbors from Maplewood. Everyone congratulated me. Everyone except my family. Until one evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Maya. "I saw the article. I'm proud of you, sis. Maybe we can talk soon?" The tone was sweet, almost rehearsed. I stared at the screen for a long time before locking it. No reply. She didn't deserve one. Let her sit with her guilt, her confusion. Let her wonder if I'd forgiven her. I hadn't. But I had something better. I had peace. Mom tried next. A voicemail dripping with concern disguised as politeness. "Clara, dear, people are asking about you. It would be nice if you came home for dinner sometime." Dinner. The word made me laugh out loud. Their world was cracking. They couldn't stand that the person they'd erased was now the one everyone admired. The daughter they'd dismissed had become the name people respected. But here's the truth. My revenge wasn't the award, or the money, or the recognition. My revenge was becoming untouchable. I no longer needed to prove anything. I no longer needed their approval to feel whole. I didn't burn bridges. I let them rot in their own silence while I built my empire on top of the ruins. Success became my form of vengeance, silent, elegant, and absolute. And when people asked about my family, I just smiled and said, "They're doing fine." Because the loudest revenge is living so well that the people who broke you can't stand to watch. Silence, it turns out, can echo louder than any scream. 6 months later, the name Jensen Studio How had become a quiet buzz in the city's design circles. What began as late nights and takeout boxes had turned into a polished, thriving firm. My work was everywhere: restaurants, startups, offices dripping with the kind of aesthetic confidence I'd once only dreamed about. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was leading. When the invitation came from a local TV network to appear on their business segment, I laughed at first. The irony was too rich to ignore. This was the same station that had once aired Maya's engagement, her big televised fairy tale. I remembered my mother watching that broadcast, crying tears of pride while telling everyone how lucky Maya was. Now, it was my turn. The morning of the interview, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the cuffs of my charcoal suit. No trembling hands, no hollow chest, just calm. My reflection didn't look like the family's burden anymore. It looked like someone who had learned how to rebuild from ashes. When the cameras rolled, the host smiled warmly and said, "Clara Jensen, founder of Jensen Studio, you've built something remarkable in such a short time. What inspired you?" For a second, memories flashed. My sister's words, my mother's disapproval, the silence that followed me out the door. I smiled, not bitterly, but with understanding. "Sometimes," I said, "the people who doubt you the most are the ones who teach you how strong you can become." The studio lights felt warm on my face. I wasn't nervous. I was free. That evening, the clip aired. Within hours, messages poured in. Congratulations, collaboration offers, strangers saying my story moved them. But one message stood out. My father. Just one line. "We're proud of you, Clara." I read it twice, then a third time. The words should have meant something, but they didn't. They came too late, after too many years of silence. It was an apology disguised as pride, and I'd learned to stop mistaking those two things. The next weekend, I attended a charity gala hosted by one of my clients. The event was a swirl of glittering dresses, polite laughter, and shallow compliments. But as I entered the ballroom, I froze for just a moment. Because standing near the champagne table was Maya. She hadn't changed much. Perfect posture, diamond earrings, a husband whose smile looked rehearsed. She was laughing for the cameras when her eyes found mine. The laughter died instantly. "Clara," she breathed, taking a hesitant step forward. "Wow, you look amazing." Her voice was soft, uncertain. I gave a polite nod. "Thank you." She opened her arms as if expecting a hug, but I didn't move. I wasn't cruel. I was just done pretending. "It's good to see you," she said, the words trembling like glass. I met her gaze and replied, "I know." Just 2 words, but the air between us shifted. She knew what I meant. She knew she was standing in front of the version of me they'd never believed could exist. For once, she couldn't reduce me to the background. We stood there in silence while the photographers snapped around us, oblivious. She looked away first. I walked past her, calm, collected, not triumphant, just whole. There was no satisfaction in seeing her crumble under her own guilt. There was only peace. Because I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need them. That night, as the gala lights dimmed and soft jazz filled the room, I stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered, endless and alive. The world was vast, and for the first time it felt like it belonged to me. That moment was my true climax. Not a scream, not vengeance, not revenge in the cinematic sense. Just quiet power. The kind that doesn't demand attention but commands it. Anyway, I wasn't the burden anymore. I was the storm they created and the calm that followed. The proof that survival, steady, graceful, and unapologetic, is the most powerful revenge there is. The Jensens still live in that same white house on Maplewood Lane. The shutters are freshly painted, the porch light still flickers at night, and the lawn remains unnaturally perfect, like nothing ever happened. But everyone in town knows that perfection can rot from the inside out. I've heard the silence inside that house is heavier now. The dinner table that once echoed with forced conversation has grown quiet. Maya's marriage, the one that used to glitter on social media, is faltering behind the curtains. Her husband travels more, and the smiles in her photos don't reach her eyes anymore. Mom doesn't post as much either. Her blessed family captions have stopped. Maybe it's hard to keep up appearances when the audience starts to notice the missing piece. Dad still goes to work every morning, still reads the same newspaper at the same table. But he avoids small talk. When someone mentions his successful daughter, he changes the subject. He tells people I'm busy, as if busyness can explain distance. But he knows. He knows exactly why I'm gone. As for me, my life is no longer measured by how much I'm needed, but by how much peace I allow myself to keep. My office is filled with morning light, green plants, and quiet music. Things our old house never had. I laugh more now, sometimes for no reason. I take walks at midnight without feeling guilty. I fill my space with people who don't see me as an obligation, but as a choice. Forgiveness came slowly, like sunlight creeping through a storm. Not for them, they haven't earned it, but for myself. For the years I spent trying to shrink into their expectations, trying to be enough for people who were never willing to see me. I forgave myself for mistaking endurance for love. Some scars still ache, but they remind me of how far I've come. I stopped searching for the version of family I was promised and started building the one I deserve. Sometimes, losing your family isn't a tragedy, it's liberation. Because sometimes, you have to let go of the hands that held you down just to remember you were born to stand tall. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted more than anyone else? Maybe even your own family? What did you do when the people you loved most decided you weren't enough? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear tonight. And if you believe that self-respect and growth are the sharpest forms of revenge, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful, life-changing stories.